coming up on the Outside of Sunday podcast.
Last year, I had quit working for an OnlyFans agency. OnlyFans is the new era of porn. So people do think that it's just this kind of website where you can sell anything on there. That's a very regular argument I hear. Well, you can put anything on there. Technically, yes, you can. 98% of the content on OnlyFans is porn. I was a high functioning alcoholic. I was severely addicted to nicotine. I'd been a smoker since I was 13. I could never kick it. Drugs were a massive part as well of my story. And literally, the Lord supernaturally gave me sobriety. I had this just absolutely transformative experience with Jesus.
Hey, you're listening to the Outside of Sunday podcast. Is your faith stuck on Sunday? Christianity was never meant to be constrained to a weekly church service. I'm Krista, and here you'll find discussions on the Bible, mum life, and of course, how to live your faith outside of Sunday. Welcome to this episode of the Outside of Sunday podcast. Today I'm so excited because I have Victoria Sinis on the Zoom call with us today. And Victoria is an Australian young woman who's just been doing some amazing work in bringing awareness to OnlyFans and also the over-sexualization of our cultures at the moment. And I just love Aussies. I lived in Australia for 7 years, so I'm so excited to be chatting with someone from across the ditch. So let me just say that. But whereabouts in Aussie are you based? You're in Melbourne, is that right?
Yes, correct. I'm in Melbourne.
How long have you been there for?
My whole life. So born and raised in Melbourne. So 26 now.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, well, let's just get into it. So you've been extremely busy. I mean, I've been watching you on Instagram and you've been around. I mean, like you've been on so many podcasts. You went over to the States and you did the Exodus Road podcast, which was amazing. I watched that whole thing. And you've just been doing like a bit of a speaking tour. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that all kind of came about?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I'm incredibly blessed. I just got back from America about 3 weeks ago. I was there for a month. When I just around California and then a little bit through, well, basically Miami and then Washington, D.C. to, talk about everything that's kind of happened in my life so far, bring awareness to it, and how basically Jesus changed my life in 5 days. And so it's been really, really cool. Yeah, so to backtrack, I guess, on how this specifically had all come about. Um, so I last year had quit working for an OnlyFans agency. And the catalyst for that was that I had this just absolutely transformative experience with Jesus. It was like when, the Lord met soul on the road and just immediately he just changed. And, or the woman at the well, and she just, and I just couldn't stop telling people about it. As I said, I went to church on a Sunday, and I assume we'll get into that story of how I actually ended up at church from selling girls online. But
Yeah.
and I just heard someone speak about the realities of this over-sexualized culture we live in, the reality of OnlyFans and all of this. And it impacted me so deeply that was on a Sunday, that by the Friday I had walked away from the agency, walked away from my dream business, which was something else that I was building, and a 14-year friendship. And yeah, just gave it all away to be able to pursue this thing called Jesus. And I didn't even understand what that was. But 8 weeks later from then, I was sober, I was baptized. And so how that all started is I just couldn't stop talking about it. I could not stop talking about how my life was one way and now it's this way. And I'm so incredibly blessed in the fact that the Lord has just healed me from things which make no sense. I had always struggled with severe obsessive compulsive thoughts. And I remember one of the first times I'd ever come into church, and this lady who knew nothing about me put her hand on my head and said, "Lord, get rid of the war in her mind." And I literally felt it sucked out of my head, and I had peace, I had clarity for the first time I can remember in my life. And I was a high functioning, basically like alcoholic. I was severely addicted to nicotine. I'd been a smoker since I was 13. I could never kick it. Drugs were a massive part as well of my story. And literally the Lord supernaturally gave me sobriety. Just one day I surrendered. And so these things are happening, and I just couldn't, as I said, I just couldn't not talk about this thing called Jesus. And so what had happened was I was lucky enough that I was invited to kind of come to schools, watch what was happening in schools, and see how this is impacting. And then at the start of the year, this year, I was actually asked to speak at a school for a little bit with a lady named Melinda Tankard Reist and her organization Collective Shout.
Mhm.
And so I was just doing this. I was working back in creative marketing and startups. So I kind of, just thought, that was my life. I guess I'd be back in the business world, but I'd still talk about Jesus on my.
It would be like on the weekends, it would be your side hustle. Not a hustle, but you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, exactly like that. That was just it. I was, the Christian girl at work who had a TikTok and spoke about Jesus. And so, yeah, never really pictured this necessarily to turn into like a ministry or a specific calling or anything like that. I didn't really know. But so, yeah, I had gone to this school and I had spoken, and Melinda had videoed it. And I just put those videos up on my TikTok, again, not thinking too much about it. And those videos, well, one of those videos went viral on TikTok. And I freaked out. Like I freaked out.
How viral? How
Like
viral?
we're not talking millions or anything. But it got to let's have a look. 291.8 thousand. And then the other ones of me speaking as well, just like started to circulate
That's
as well.
huge. That's great.
Yeah, yeah, especially because in the video, like I'm talking about OnlyFans, and it's like it's just the craziest thing like in that specific part as well. So it was the Lord. It was the Lord. That was him really going, I need you to move. I need you to take a
Mm,
step. And so at this time I start to get like a little bit of media attention. People start reaching out to me. And as I said, I freak out. And so I go into a 3-day fast. I was like, I
mm,
don't know what to do. There's something on this. I don't feel like this is just my video going viral and that's it.
mm,
So I went into a 3-day fast. The first day was like water and black coffee. Then the second day was just water. And then the third day was nothing. And I
mm.
really was like, God, what do you want me to do? Like, what the heck is happening? Um, and so just to circle back just a little bit, about 2 weeks before that, or around that, I was invited to go to a movie premiere. And it was the Exodus Christ screening of one of their films, Buying Her. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
yeah. And so I had met the vice president and another lady that works for them. Her name's Sloan. She's just beautiful. And they said that we would love to have you on the podcast, but we only do in-person podcasts. Would you consider coming to America? And I was like, how funny you say that. And we can talk about this as well, like how intentional God is. I was like, I have this hunch that no, I said, I have a thought of coming to visit America. I'm thinking of going in July. And they're like, oh, no way. If you do come, let us know. We would love to have you on the podcast. And so that was just the conversation.
Mhm.
But I had agreed from there to go to America to go on this podcast. And so circle back, we're in the fast now. And that week that my video had gone viral, I really felt like God had asked me to give all of my money away. And so it's not like I had a lot of money or anything like that, but I felt him specifically asking me to put everything that I had on something specific.
Mm.
And so I had no money. And then I have a video go viral. I go into this fast and I really sense that God is like, I want you to quit your job. And I'm like, wait, what? I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, I just got rid of all of my money. I don't
Mhm.
have any. I've agreed to go to America and you want me to quit my job. I was like, this makes no
Mm.
sense. Because in my mind, when I'd agreed to go to America, I was like, look, I got a little bit of money. I'm working full time. I could maybe get a second job if need be, just to get that extra boost of like cash or whatever. So I had it all
Mm.
figured out.
Mhm.
And so this was over Easter weekend. And so it was like the Thursday to the Saturday that I was in the fast. And then it was the Easter Sunday. I'm pretty sure. No, sorry. The week before that was Easter. This was the week after Easter. Sorry.
Cool.
Um, so I came out of that fast and I remember that I had this, like, I guess like a vision. And it was a table calendar. And on the table calendar, there was the Monday, like, the ones I'm talking about, like the old ones, and you like rip them off. They're like the month by month
And you
calendar.
hang them in the toilet?
Yeah,
Those
like you
ones?
can
Yeah.
have one of those. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And so you know how they have like the Monday box, the Tuesday box, the Wednesday
Yes.
box, Thursday box.
Mm.
Friday box was blacked out. And it was this Friday you're quitting your job. And I'm like,
Oh.
oh, chance. Anyways, so I come out of the fast. I had this download of this school program, which is now creating gems. And so I had that download come through that, and it was quit your job. Now, from that Sunday until that Friday, the only way I can explain what had happened is I literally felt like the Lord had taken his hand off my life. And this wasn't in a nasty way. This wasn't in like a, that God was punishing me, but I can
Mm.
tell that it was his encouragement to be like, this is so, I need you to quit your job. And I
Mm.
just had unrest. I was emotionally like up and down. I couldn't sleep. I just felt like there was something in me that was like ripping at me.
Mhm.
And so the Friday came around, and at 5:01 p.m., I will never forget this. At 5:01 p.m. on that Friday, I quit my job, and I had such an overwhelming sense of peace.
Wow.
And it was just the most incredible thing. And so from that moment, it was about 9 or 10 weeks until I was going to America. And God just like, it was just another person inviting me, another person inviting me, another opportunity, another connection, another this, another that. And
Mm.
like people calling me, being like, I felt like the Lord told me to pay for your airplane ticket. I felt like the Lord, like,
Wow.
I'm talking just again, think about I had no money. I haven't worked. How did I get over there? People telling me that the Lord has asked me to give you a specific amount of money to be able to send you over there. Just financial miracle after financial miracle. And I understand now why he did that, because there is nothing about any of this that can glorify me or my capacity or
Mm.
anything that I've done, because there is no way that in that short amount of time, even if I worked 100-hour work weeks, that I would have been able to afford to get to America and have the trip that I had. Even just the opportunities that he opened up, the platforms, the people, and everything
Yeah.
like that. So it was so special. And I hope that the reason why I tell that story, and I love to do it in such depth, is because it just shows continuous sacrifice. And I feel that everyone wants a miracle in their life. Everyone wants the Lord to come through for them. But in order to walk in miracle territory, you need to have obedience and sacrifice. It's not that you can just pray and then go, oh, I want this, and this. It's in that surrender that these things happen, but it's the most beautiful thing. It's not a punishment. And I just hope that encourages people that whatever you
Mm.
feel like the Lord has for you to lay down, just do it. Do it with joy, and do it fast, and do it quickly, because
Yes.
what is on the other side of that surrender is something
Mhm.
that you can't even fathom. And it is such a gift. And that's where the miracles come through. And you see uh, the craziness of the Lord in the best way
Yeah.
possible. So that was kind of, yeah. So went overseas, did the trip, and yeah, now I've come back, and we've been speaking in schools, and yeah, just continuing to do podcasts, and having a look at some other ventures as well, and things which are really exciting. So that's kind of that in a nutshell.
That all sounds so exciting. And I just am loving watching your journey. I mean, I only recently found you on Instagram and I just was like, this chick is awesome. And like when I watched your Exodus Cry thing, and I was just like, I love how Aussie you are as well. Like, I was like, these Americans, like, I mean, it's just so nice. Like, this is what I love about even being able to do this podcast and get Kiwi stories out there of what the Lord is doing. It's like
Yeah.
we hear so much from America. Nothing wrong with that at all. But it's like God is doing things in Australia, God is doing things in New Zealand, and that deserves to be glorified. Like God deserves to be glorified through
Yeah.
those things as well, and not just America. Not that I'm saying anything bad, of course.
I totally understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love what you were saying before about like how you had to let go of your job in order for God to
Mm.
move in your life. Is we can sometimes have a dream for what we think needs to happen, or have a vision of what we want to do with whatever God has given us, or whatever passions we have. But as long as it's our dream, we're holding on to it almost too tight. As soon as you let it go and just give it to God, like how you did, man, that's when he gets all the glory, like you said, and that's
Yeah.
when he just does what he needs to do to make it happen, because it's his work and his plan coming out through your life, and it's so cool, so cool. So I love that the work that you're doing. Can you just, is it Creating Gems, the
Yeah.
name?
Yeah.
Creating Gems. Yeah. I love that. We're going to get a little bit more into that a little bit later on. But I'm really interested in hearing more about you and your faith journey. Like, did you have a Christian upbringing? What was your kind of background in faith, or was it there was nothing there? I'd love to just hear about how that all came about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's actually a really beautiful story of redemption. The more that I'm understanding my family dynamics of what it was growing up and seeing, I think about that scripture that like the Lord, like he always will bring to completion everything that he starts, and he'll always finish a good work. And so I grew up in a family, and my exposure to Christianity or to the church and everything like that, from my personal memory, is very limited. I grew up in a house where at a really, really young age, I remember us going to church, but we would always rock up late and leave early. I don't remember having like a community element to it, never being like, engulfed in the worship or anything like that. Um, and then I guess you could say my home life, unfortunately, wasn't very reflective in any capacity of the values of our faith.
Mm,
Um, and so like I know that we couldn't swear in the house and would say grace before dinner, but that's literally as much as you would get.
mhm.
Um, so but this is the interesting thing. So that's kind of it growing up. Like again, there was nothing really about my upbringing in any other way besides those things that I would say was reflective of faith. Um, and then, but I just have this memory. And the thing is, I don't know if it's real or if it's fake, but I had one person confirm that this is a real story. And so this was my foundation growing up. So again, I guess there was no conversations about, we pray about things, we talk about things, never read the Bible.
Mm.
And again, just the home life just was not reflective of that in any capacity. But I always had this underlying thing where I would say, if someone ever put a gun to my head and said to denounce God or I'll shoot you, I would say, shoot me.
Yeah.
And where the story came from was when I remember being in children's church. And again, I don't know if this is real. I don't know if it's not, but I have this very specific memory of like the stage being here. And I was like 5. And I was sitting there, and the preacher in children's church was saying this story about how a gunman had come into school and put a gun to a little girl's head and said, denounce God. And she said, no, shoot me. And the gun didn't go off.
Oh, wow.
And so I had one person tell me that, yeah, that's a legitimate story. But I just
Mhm.
have this weird memory of that. And so because of that memory, I've always grown up saying that I will never denounce God, even if that I was in that situation. So that's been my faith, up until about a year ago.
Yeah.
But that nothing else that was reflective of Jesus besides that.
Okay. Okay. I get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I wonder if it was like, because I remember there was this book that went around when I was a youngish girl. I mean, I'm a bit older than you, so it was around when I was like early teens, and it was about one of the school shootings in America, like the Columbine school shooting, I
Mm,
think it was. I'm just like wondering if it was a story from one of those things. But yeah, amazing that that was something that was such a strong value for you, even
mm,
though it wasn't a lifestyle, maybe. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, well, so you came from a bit of like maybe cultural Christianity, would you call it? Meaning like we don't lie, we know it's not good to lie, we know it's not good to steal, like even how you were saying like no
Mm,
swearing, those kind of values, which are Christian values, but it's just a cultural thing. It's not a religious thing. Like there was no real faith in God, and like you said, not much Bible reading or spending time in worship or anything like that. Would you say that that would be a accurate description, or am I
yeah,
just way
yeah,
off?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That would definitely probably align a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as you grew up, that kind of was in the background of your mind that, yeah, I won't ever denounce God. I'm
Mm.
living my life though. So you got a bit of a career going. What was it that was your line of work when you were, I suppose, before this OnlyFans thing all kind of took off?
Yeah, so I used to work in like business and startups and all of that. So I was actually helping one of my best friends to help build her hospitality businesses, and I was doing that for a while. And I'd actually quit helping her with that to help my other close personal friend to start building their OnlyFans agency.
Okay. Okay. Did you go to uni to do that, or is this something that you just kind of worked your way up and you're just naturally good at?
Yeah, I went to uni for a little bit. So when I graduated high school, I went to La Trobe University to do anthropology and sustainability and development. And I wanted to help create like health policies for third world countries.
Wow.
Um, and so I hated it though. Like we learned like the weirdest stuff, like gorillas that could read sign language and like play chess. And now that's like a weird fantasy. I'm like, I need to buy a gorilla one day and like play chess with it. Like that's what I learned. Um, but and so from there, I just went into sales. I went into marketing, and all of that. And yeah, I loved it. I loved doing that. I was in health and fitness for a little bit, working in a gym and just kind of floating, I guess you could say, in that aspect. And then yeah, it wasn't until um I kind of got into that line of work with my best friend, helping her with the hospitality stuff, that I was like, wow, like I've dabbled in marketing and sales and stuff, but I love startups. And that was back in
Mm,
2020. And then since 2020, I've just been in various different types of startups.
mm. And so, what was your first kind of maybe like interaction, or the first time you heard about OnlyFans? When was that?
So it's so interesting. I feel like OnlyFans is just this weird thing that has just slid into our culture and it's just solidified itself. I feel
Mm.
like for everyone, there's no like definitive memory of, I remember when OnlyFans came about. It's like, it's just here. It's
Just
just
kind of
arrived.
crept in, like
Yeah,
with
it's just set up
all of it.
shop.
Yeah.
And so for me, I always heard whispers of OnlyFans. I guess again, social media is oversaturated with articles about OnlyFans girls. Every second girl on Instagram is an OnlyFans girl. And
Mm.
so for me, I didn't really have an understanding of what OnlyFans was, or that this is a porn platform. But I just, again, was like, I don't know what it is. I think you can like sell your feet on there. Like, I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
And
Not literally sell your feet, but sell feet pics or
yeah,
feet videos.
sorry,
Yeah.
feet pics.
That would be
And
crazy. Mail order feet.
it's so disturbing.
Disturbing. Yeah.
That's another type of industry.
Yeah, let's
Um,
yeah. Let's
yeah.
be far removed from that. Okay, sorry. Carry on.
And so yeah, when I was approached for this, the person in my life, the reason why they had decided to start the agency is because a close personal friend in their life was already doing OnlyFans and they were already quite well known in OnlyFans. So that's why it was kind of like, for me on the outside, I was like, I don't really know what it is. I've not seen it. At this time, I'd never watched porn as well. Like I've never been exposed or was like a regular porn, you just, yeah, wasn't a thing.
User, yeah.
So I was like, okay, just to make an analysis from the outside, I guess. I was like, a close personal friend of mine is saying this is okay. I trust them, therefore I trust their decisions. They know people in this like sphere already. If I look at these people on a superficial level, they were poor, now they seem rich, they seem happy. I don't really get what OnlyFans is, but therefore, from all these outside factors, it must be a good thing. And that was
Mm,
just my perception of it.
And looking at it now, can you just tell our listeners and people who may not be aware of what OnlyFans is, just what it really is in reality?
Absolutely. So OnlyFans is the new era of porn. So people do think that it's just this kind of website where you can sell anything on there. That's a very regular argument I hear. Well, you can put anything on there. Technically, yes, you can. If I loved to cook and I wanted to make a cooking show, I could do cooking videos. I could lock that content and you would have to pay to watch me cook. But
Mm,
the law is that you can actually directly ask me questions. So you could be like, what are you using that recipe? How much of that? And I can talk to you about that. So that was the original intent of OnlyFans back in 2016 when it came around, to be a more niche and decentralized way to build communities outside of these mega platforms. But they allow this thing, which in the internet world is called not safe for work, and that is porn. So in
mm,
2020, OnlyFans blew up with pornographic content. So now the platform is solely identified as pornographic content. 98%, and this is a 2024 study, 98% of the content on OnlyFans is porn. So this is a porn platform. Girls that sign up to do OnlyFans are not OnlyFans content creators. They are porn stars and they are creating sexual content. So I
Mm,
think that the reason why I harp on that is because we use these fluffy terms, content creator again, OnlyFans girl. And it's like, what does that even mean? And so
yeah.
to label that correctly, that's exactly what OnlyFans is, and it's the new era of it. And I think the whole allure is the fact that you think that you're talking to this girl one on one and having a relationship and a conversation with her. And I think that's why it's blown up to be this thing that it is now.
All right, let's just hold that thought for a moment. If you're enjoying this episode of the podcast, please make sure you like, subscribe, leave us a comment, and a 5-star review. Now back to the episode.
And I also think it's interesting as well because, oops, I dropped my pen. I'll just start that again. I think something that might appeal to people as well in that is that you can direct message the girls, like you're saying, and you can tell them what you want, like, and so people with like strange things that they like, they can message the girls and say, do this. And then if they are putting it out there, then they might or might not do it, I suppose. But yeah, is that part of it as well?
Yes, correct. So they're called custom requests. And so that's just one element of OnlyFans, but subscribers, so the people that pay to see the girls' content, can direct message them and ask them for specific custom things for them to act out or to do. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm just like, it's so weird talking about this. Like, but it's so important to talk about it because a lot of people don't know. Like in New Zealand, we just had an OnlyFans girl on one of our major podcasts here, and she doesn't do pornography, but she does, very scanty bikini pics and things like that. But it's almost like it's becoming so culturally acceptable. And, she's on this podcast talking about how much money she makes, and it's like 6 figures a month. No. Yeah, figures a month, she said she got. I'm not sure if she still gets that, but she's still doing very, very well. And even my sister was telling me that the other week on one of the Australian game shows, I don't know the name. It's like something 100. It's about like the percentage of people. I don't know. It's a game show. Anyway,
Okay.
there was a contestant on there, and his job was exactly what you were doing, marketing OnlyFans girls. And it was just like, oh yeah, this is just normal, like it's just becoming so culturally acceptable. Is that something that you kind of felt when you were in the industry too, that nobody really batted an eye, or was it scandalous to be doing what you were doing?
No, it was totally glorified. People thought it was elite. They thought that it was this like great way to make money, that it was liberating, that like we're the new era, like you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
even legitimate business people who like you would deem like great people were like, I want to get in on OnlyFans. I want to make the money. Like, how can I buy into the agency and stuff like that? So in that world, absolutely no one really cares. But the weird thing about that is this. The agency, people don't care, but they would say, oh, but if my missus ever did that, no chance. If my daughter ever did that, no chance. So it's this weird double-edged thing that it's like, okay, a lot of the people from the agency perspective are more than happy to take the money. But if someone that they cared about did this, they would be deeply disturbed. So I think everyone intrinsically deep down has an awareness and has an understanding that this is wrong. And I even saw that with the girls. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And if not, you are in such complete and utter denial. And then that adds on other things of what you need to cope with that denial. But I really, truly, in my heart of hearts, don't think that anyone 100% is okay with this. But on the surface level, everyone that was in my world absolutely didn't think there was anything wrong with it.
Yeah. Well, can you tell us a little bit about now, because the progression of the storyline is that you've just, started with the startup with was it your friend's friend, or was it a friend who
So
started?
I wasn't like an owner or anything. So there was 3 people that owned the agency. And just because I had a close relationship with one of the owners, I came on to be able to help build the marketing division.
Can you just kind of run us through what the job is? Because for some people, they're like, marketing OnlyFans girls, like, how does that even work? What are you doing? Are you posting for them? Are you just trying to get clients? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 3 kind of elements to an OnlyFans agency, the way that I like to break down the one that I worked for anyways. So aspect number 1 is OnlyFans account management. So as we were saying before, the subscribers, the whole allure of it is that you get to sit there and have a conversation with someone. So just say if the girl on OnlyFans has maybe 5,000 or 10,000 subscribers. Well, she can't sit there and talk to 5 or 10,000 people 24/7, 7 days a week on all different time zones. So she has to offset that to someone. So that's where an agency comes in. And what an agency will do is basically they will onboard the girl. They do a full audit of the girl's account. They look through all their subscribers, all their conversations, how much content do they have, all these different things. And they get the girl to answer this thing called the questionnaire. And the questionnaire will basically as much detail as possible about the girl. So then what they can do is form this thing called a brief. And the brief is what we give to these things called chatters. Now, chatters are people that we hire from third world countries. The chatters that we would hire were people from the Philippines. And so you basically hire people and pay them about 2 to 5 USD an hour. And their main role is basically a sales job. So they're to make as much money on these accounts as possible, pretending to be these OnlyFans girls. So that's kind of, yeah. So
It's
that's why I say
crazy.
people think
It's
that they're
crazy.
to an OnlyFans girl, but they're not. They're talking to a chatter, and their main role is to be trained in this thing called the girlfriend experience. And the girlfriend experience is how they literally can try and manipulate men to get as much money as possible from them. So that's kind of aspect number one.
Uh-huh. I feel like even just that alone, just getting that information out there to just like break this illusion of what OnlyFans is, because yeah, you are probably you're not talking to this beautiful young girl. You might be talking to a 40-year-old man, like who knows who
Yeah.
you were chatting to.
Truly.
Yeah.
And they're literally trained to, make as much money off you as possible. And I just think that, if people really understood that, it would shatter a lot of this illusion. I'm hoping. And then aspect number 2 is where I come in. So the marketing element. So again, think of this like a business. If you're trying to make as much money as possible, you need customers. So where do we get our subscribers for OnlyFans from? Well, we get them from social media, from the internet. So my role and responsibility was to make sure basically girls went as viral as possible. So what we did is we had hired a third party, and these people would actually study all the algorithms and trends on TikTok. And every single day, they would send us through very curated and specific provocative content. And this content had trending skits, trending sounds, trending songs, whatever. And then we would send that to the girls. So the girls' requirements were to have at least 3 to 5 TikTok accounts. And on every, yes,
That's
yes,
a lot.
yeah. And then the same on Instagram. So about 3 to 5 different Instagram accounts. And then from there, what you would do, because TikTok flags if like a video is duplicated, you would have to create at least 5 unique videos per account. And so that means you're creating at least potentially 20 unique videos every day of very specific, provocative, curated content.
I mean, I know it's TikTok and it's content creation, but that sounds like a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
I've done a tiny little bit of that, like just for this podcast. I mean, it's definitely not risque. It's so wholesome. But like even doing that and like trying to cut things together and like make it look good, and it takes a lot of time. So these girls must be working actually really hard.
Yeah. And I think, again, I hope that shatters the illusion that you can just jump on and it's easy and all these things. Like that was a very specific thing that we were getting the girls to do. And I actually got in a fight with one of the girls once about like the content requirements. And so that's kind of element number 2. So again, think about that though. So there was one girl that literally in 7 days of doing this method of content creation, she got 2.2 million views on one of her videos. And so it's like, okay, so if you look at that, if one agency in Australia is pumping out this much volume of sexualized content on the internet with the very specific target of trying to pull people into funneling systems to get them to OnlyFans, imagine how much our social media is actually saturated with over-sexualized content. And this is on Reddit, it's on X, there's Snapchat, dating apps, all these other avenues we were looking at. And just for people to understand as well, what this actually does in society. So what this does is it softly influences people. And we have to realize that soft influence is so much more, what's the word? Efficient, I guess you can say, than hard influence. If I sat here right now and said, you have to like this picture, you have to do what this girl says, you could go, get screwed. Like, don't tell me.
It's a put off. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you're slowly seeing this on social media and you're seeing women getting liked, rewarded, and loved for being sexual, as a girl, you subconsciously softly get influenced to go, well, therefore, I want to be liked, rewarded, and loved in this world. So I see these women doing these acts to do that. Therefore, I have to be that way to be that way. And then for men, again, they're seeing these women get rewarded. And so they're going, okay, a desirable woman is a woman that looks this way, acts this way, and does these things. And so that's how we're subconsciously able to softly influence a culture to think that this stuff is normal and this is okay. And that's why we now are in the situation we are, where we live in a world where OnlyFans is glorified and to be a porn star is actually seen as a positive.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good for anybody. I was literally just thinking that when you were talking about all this content that these girls are constantly creating, and it's totally saturated. I mean, my son came to me once and he said, he's 10, and he said, Mum, do you have a TikTok? And I was like, how do you even know that word? Okay, first of all, like, how do you know that word? He goes to a Christian school, all right? So somebody some point mentioned TikTok. And I said, yes, I do have a TikTok. And he said, why do you have a TikTok? And I said, I'm producing content that I'm wanting people to hear about the gospel. I want people to hear the testimonies about what Jesus is doing. And he said, and I said, but I don't do it for me. Like, I don't go on there to scroll. And he said, why not? And I said, because it's basically pornography. Like, that's what I said, because there is so much content. I know you can like set your algorithm by like scrolling past quickly and like liking things that are wholesome and good, but you have to wade through a lot of stuff before you can actually get onto a good algorithm sometimes. So yeah, it's so harmful to young girls.
Truly, and something I just want to pick up on that you said, just for anyone listening as well, for the reality of this, because you might sit there and go, my child's 10, they go to a Christian school, therefore maybe they're safe. Absolutely not. Majority of the schools I go to are faith-based schools. I've actually not been to a secular school yet, or even met teenagers in a secular setting. And they're all well aware of people like Anna Paul, of OnlyFans, of porn, of all these things. And so I think as well, for anyone listening, if you're a parent and you go, well, my child grows up in a home of faith, we don't have to talk about these things, I can let them have an iPad or a tablet, or at their school they're protected. I don't think that we can have the luxury of that type of naivety. And there's literally government programs here in Australia that are digital safety courses for parents to take for their under 5 children. Because if your child is even 2 years old and they're using an iPad or a phone or any type of device, the likelihood of something popping up and them being exposed to porn is massive. And so I think that we need to realize that this isn't a secular problem and like a worldly problem and like the church is protected or whatever. This is an everyone problem. And so that's why we need to make sure that we are educating our children as early as possible. Do you know what to do if something pops up? Do you know what to do if you see porn? Do you know what to do if something makes you feel uncomfortable? Do you know you can talk to me? Because if we shame our children, if we do catch them watching something and we yell at them or whatever, this industry thrives on shame. And so then what you're doing is you're just making this go underground even more for your child. And so I think that that's just a really important thing for any parent that's listening that is of faith and maybe says, well, this isn't a me problem. No, it's not a matter of if my child will see porn. It's a matter of when they will see porn. And you want to be the one to educate them about healthy sexuality much more than you want the internet to be able to.
I mean, like, I just want to clap because I am 1000% on board with everything that you just said. And my kids are always like, Mom, why don't we have devices? Or like, can I go on the device? And like, we have an iPad that's like 7 years old. I mean, like, it's so old, and they very, very rarely get to go on it. I'm super like cautious about screen time, but I also try not to make it a fearful thing. Rather, it's like an education thing. And I
Yeah.
have raved so much. Have you heard of Good Pictures, Bad Pictures? That book? Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Love it. And I have used it for all of my children, and it is fantastic. I've literally seen it work for my son. Quick story. We were listening to something on Spotify on the TV. You know, you can have a smart TV, you can hook up Spotify, and you can just be listening. They were listening to the Encanto movie soundtrack,
Yeah.
big movie, great songs. And all of a sudden, my son says to me, Mum, look at the TV. And I look at the TV, and there was literally a picture of a naked man and a naked woman embracing. And like he was holding her, I mean, like, I'm just going to tell the details. Yeah. He was holding her breasts, and like they were both naked, and like you could almost see her downstairs private parts. So, and I was just like, thank you, like, good boy. Like, thank you so much for telling me. Let's turn this off. But I was like, my kids can't even have Spotify on the TV.
Playing children's songs.
Children's songs. And the thing is, it was the artwork for the artist who was the singer of the song on the soundtrack that it just popped up. It was not even just like an advertisement pop-up. It was literally the artwork to go with the song.
Doesn't that like the artwork to go with the song for a child's show, like a child's movie?
I know.
Like, and that's not even one of those cartoons where it's like, oh, it could be a little bit adult. It's like, no, like that's like a kid's movie.
Yeah, and it was literally out of the blue, but I was just like, thank the Lord for Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, because that was absolute evidence that it works. My son, he knew exactly what to do. He looked away. He was looking away, and he said, Mum, you need to look at the TV. And then that's when I was like, instantly, great job. Let's turn it off. Oh, that's a shame, like that we can't even have that on the TV. And anyway. I'm so on board with that. Education is so important for our children. And the whole shame thing. Yeah, I agree. As soon as things become shame focused or shame associated, that removing the openness to be able to talk about it, it just breeds underneath, it breeds hiding things, it breeds just all of that nasty stuff. So let's get back a little bit now to your OnlyFans marketing work. Could you maybe share some of the highs and then some of the lows during that season when you were in there? How long were you in there, by the way?
So, I guess you could say in an unofficial capacity, again, this was a startup business and it was a close personal friend. So in like an unofficial consultancy role, it maybe was about 6 months, but paid work, I lasted 5.5 weeks.
Okay. So it was actually quite a short amount of time. For some reason, I thought it was a bit longer. Okay. No, cool.
Yeah. No, so all up, about 6 months of helping, like when the business was getting built and everything, until we could bring me on in an official capacity with a wage. And then, getting paid to do this, it was a very short amount of time. Which I hope for people like that, again, kind of understand like how deeply this disturbed me. So highs and lows. That's a great question. I've never been asked that. I think that, I guess, to kind of put it in perspective, this is like an idea that I'm fleshing out. It's really interesting when I'm looking back at my life and I'm looking at why did I love startups so much, because I was building a medicinal cannabis startup. I'd helped my best friends with her restaurants, the OnlyFans startup, and I'd also worked at a medicinal cannabis startup for a little bit as well. And I was like, why do I love business so much? And I've always loved it and everything like that. But it was my identity. And I never felt more alive. I never felt like I had more of a purpose and that I mattered in this world, and that I was actually creating something that my life wasn't meaningless, and that it wasn't just this. For me, that's what I struggled with, that I always felt I was here. I was never there. I was always going to be here. I was never, and it was always just out of my reach. And I always had this overwhelming sense of doom and hopelessness over myself. And the only times when I didn't have this feeling of doom and hopelessness over myself, and like I had a purpose and that my life mattered, is when I was creating businesses. And that's why it was so deeply ingrained in my identity. And so they were the highs, the building, the working, the late nights. Like I used to flex that I'd work 100-hour work weeks.
That is impressive. I mean,
thanks. But I used to love it, and I would search for that. And I'd say, I want to work more, 80 hours. Who wants to work 80 hours? Give me 100, give me 100. Like I would harp it on my best friend in the hospitality stuff. And then even building so anyways, the whole point of that is I've been reflecting on that and why. And I think it's because when when you're using your God-given talents for the wrong thing, that's when you place your identity in them. It's like the Lord has blessed me with a business mindset. The Lord has blessed me to be able to see things, especially specifically in startups, that make things simple. That for other people, they can't see those things that way. And that's a gifting and a blessing on my life, but that's to be used for the kingdom. That's not to be used in the other way. And so that's why I think, but I'm learning that people that are exceptional at things, that's why they place so much of their identity in those things, because they don't understand that gift is actually from Jesus, and that's what they were born and created for. So they put their identity in the wrong thing and they use it for something that was meant to be used to glorify God.
Yeah.
So it's like a weird high and low. Of one of the biggest highs was that I just finally felt like my life had mattered, because I was building something that I felt was bigger than me. But then the lows was especially specifically during that time of when the agency came about, the drugs, the alcohol, just you have this weird thing that I feel, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like even growing up for me, again, I don't ever want to be one of those people that over spiritualizes things, but I also feel like that this is an interesting thing that, again, I'm kind of observing and trying to flesh out a little bit more of. Growing up, it's always like there was two people. There was the underlying one, the one that God had created me to be, my true identity, who I was born to be. But then this person that was this worldly one that was being destroyed by the world, I guess you could say. And what I mean by that, to flesh that out a little bit more, is that from such a young age, I suffered with depression. I suffered with anxiety. As I said, OCD thoughts was that, like, my brain, it just would never stop. The noise would never stop. That led to the suicide stuff, that led to the alcohol, the drugs, and all of that. So I had this deep pain in me. I had these deep struggles, but yet the underlining theme of me was I always had so much joy and hope. How does that make sense? Like I would sit there in high school and my friends would be so upset about their boyfriends. And I would literally sit there and be like, our life is here. This is where we die. This is how important this is right now. And I'm like 14, giving them worldly, like world perspectives on things. And yet I always had so much happiness, but yet I didn't at the same time. It's like these true parallels. And I'm learning that a lot of people that come into their faith have that as well. And so I just think that that's another interesting part, that I think that there's a lot of people that there is that God-given gift, that the fruits of the spirit as well, of joy, of freedom. And it's like, that's what we were born and destined to have. But yet the world just pushes that down in us so much that that's why a lot of us really, really struggle to be able to get there. And that's why we place our identity in these other things that we think are the things that give us that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What was your relationship like with the Lord at this time in your life? Because it sounds like even though you were, this high performing woman who was just like girl bossing her way through all of these startups and like so cool, but you were also, it sounds like, you're doing drugs and having alcohol. You said you were addicted to cigarettes. Was there any kind of drawing to the Lord at this point, or were you just quite far from God?
No, and this is why I just love it. I love to tell this so much, because I had no desire for Jesus. But what is cool is that the Lord hunts you down. So it's on reflection. So in January, I always do this thing. Well, I started to the past couple of years do this thing where I write the person I would want me to be would be. And then I write a list of the things, and I found that list. And so January 2022, 2023, I wrote that I didn't want to smoke anymore. I didn't want to do drugs anymore, and I didn't want to drink anymore. But then I also wrote, and there was a bunch of other things, but at the end of it, it said, I want to read my Bible for 10 minutes.
What? And
I didn't even have a Bible.
Wow.
I own a Bible. I had like a kid's Bible that like was around somewhere in the house. But
Wow.
I didn't even have a Bible.
It's like you were craving it, like something in you. Yeah.
And then, as I said, home life, not reflective of faith in any capacity. I don't think I'd ever had conversations with my parents about God or ever. And yet that year, my only birthday present was a Bible. So in January,
What?
I said, I want to read my Bible for 10 minutes. In April, I get a Bible. And in April is when I start working at the OnlyFans agency. So
Coming up next week on the Outside of Sunday podcast.
And so what do we think is going to happen if we continue to tell our young girls that they need to be these sexualized things? It's like 9 to 14-year-olds are the biggest creators of child pornography because they're sending out pictures and nudes of themselves to each other. 9-year-old.
From 9-year-old.
That's a study that I read as I'm developing these programs, that it's literally starting with 9-year-olds. The amount of young boys that are asking girls for naked pictures and saying that they will take their own lives if they don't get a picture of this girl is massive. There was literally a girl in that class yesterday that had a boy say that I will take my life if you don't send me pictures.
Congrats! You made it to the end of this episode of the Outside of Sunday podcast. Thanks for the support. Become an official outsider by liking and subscribing and leaving a 5-star review. If you'd like to connect with the podcast, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search Outside of Sunday podcast. And don't forget to let someone you know about this podcast.